Welcome to Laura's World for another edition. Tonight I am interviewing a new friend, JD. He's pretty awesome, actually. He does a lot for the recovery world, a lot. He's got a really cool Instagram page. He's got a YouTube. He's got a podcast. He's got everything. So we're gonna talk to him. I actually had the pleasure of being on his podcast not too long ago. He graciously agreed to return the favor. So I'm excited to see what he has to say as always. JD, thank you for doing this with me. Every day I turn on my Instagram and you are interviewing somebody else. You remind me of someone, Mike. From Inspire to Inspire. You guys are on it constantly. And I love that energy and I love what you guys are trying to do. If you would not mind sharing a little bit of your story instead of listening to everybody else's, that would be amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being one of my guests. I did just release 37 in a row, episodes, like not even like bite-sized episodes, like
I know.
hour to 2 hour long marathon podcast episodes because I'm not going to, shorten somebody's story just because I'm trying to rush out episodes.
Yep.
I'm not going to, minimalize somebody's story just because I'm trying to do this bigger than it's a very hard thing to do. I'm not trying to pat my shoulder.
Maybe I ask you that. Why are you trying to get them so many out every single day? What's your
I'm a
purpose?
drug addict. I'm a drug addict. I'm obsessive. I obsess over things, Laura.
All right.
I'm a drug addict when it comes down to it. So, I don't do drugs anymore. I don't drink anymore. But besides that, like I'm still an obsessive person. And if I find something that fills that void and fills my like soul and feeds my soul, I'm going to chase it. For a long time, it was drugs and alcohol that fed my soul, right? And I chased that shit. And I made sure I had money for it. And I made sure I could spend my life doing it in all my 20s. And we'll get to that. But like I have that still mentality, except for now my drive isn't to get high, it's to stay sober. I have to work just as hard at staying sober as I did to get high. The biggest cliche in sobriety, and I have it on my arm, is 1 day at a time. But when you're a drug addict, it's 1 minute at a time. 1 day at a time is a breath of fresh air compared to 1 minute at a time. I discovered drinking when I was 11. Not like in a bad way. I grew up with two parents that love each other, that are still together to this very day. I'm 35 and they've been together almost 40 years. They had me a year after they got married when they were 23. I have a brother that's 3 years younger, a sister that's 9 years younger. We're all very close. We went on a lot of vacations together, Disney World, road trips, you name it. We've been there, I think 40 states together. And one of those, those kind of childhoods that you want. I was very fortunate that I grew up in Jersey, right outside of Philly. I discovered alcohol when I was 11. And it wasn't like I had alcoholic parents. It was just, I had parents that knew how to throw a party. You know how you hear a lot like, oh, I had to steal my parents' liquor and I had to pour in so they wouldn't find out that I was I didn't have to do that. I went into the basement, I grabbed the Captain Morgan, and I made myself a Captain and Coke when I was 11. My best friend and I, we were obsessed with watching The Outsiders when we were in 5th grade, and we would drink a Captain and Coke and watch The Outsiders when he would sleep over, which was like almost every Saturday night. And then I started drinking alcoholically. It was February of 99. I was 12. The first person I knew died February 1st, 1999. It was a friend of mine. He was a year older and he got hit by a car. And he was, run across the street. Literally the fastest person I'd ever met at that point. Very, very athletic. We all thought he was going to play in the NHL one day. And I remember saying to my buddy, like, the same friend that was sleeping over, like, hey, because he was friends with him too, like, hey, if we drink, we're going to feel a lot better right now. 20 yeyears later, I can look back and say that's when I started drinking alcoholically, because it's not how much you drink, it's why you drink. So, but that's not to say I didn't drink a lot, because I drank a lot, Laura. Like middle school, like 7th and 8th grade, it was every weekend. By sophomore, junior year, it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, maybe some Sundays. By senior year, it was almost every single night. I mean, a 6-pack a night, every single night, if not more. So after that, I moved to Massachusetts with my family, and I was like, oh, a fresh start. My dad had a job up there. I was going to college up in Quincy. I was doing pretty well, but I missed Jersey and I missed my friends. So I ended up getting a job that I could afford to like live on my own in Jersey. So I took that and I went back to Jersey and I had my own place. Very dangerous to be 20 years old and be the first one to have your own place and not a college student. It quickly became the party place. Everyone would just bring all of their drugs and alcohol over because they couldn't do them at home. Eventually, alcohol stopped working. I had turned 22 and it just wasn't fun anymore. I went so hard at 21, 6 nights a week at least, hitting all this. This is back in 2007 when I turned 21. But yeah, so like I was drinking all the time, finding ways to drink, and it wasn't working. I was trying to find different outlets and different escapes. I went on like a bender of like acid, went on a bender of ecstasy and shrooms. I was looking to escape always. I didn't know how to process things. Like, I guess like grief was a big thing for me then. I didn't know how to process things. I just knew how to drown that. It wasn't like I saw this. Like, it wasn't like I saw this happening in front of me, like with family, and been like, oh, I'm going to have that. Or I saw this with friends and like, oh, I want that. It was more like, this is how I am going to escape. This is how I'm going to learn things, is through this. And I was stubborn. I was an oldest child who was a rebel and trying to find my own way. I didn't want to hear your answers. I wanted to do it myself. I wanted to find out that I'm not going to be able to do this. I want to be wrong. I want to find out that I'm going to be wrong. You're not going to tell me I can't do it. I'm going to find out that I can't do it. When I'm 22 years old in 2008, biggest thing out there in 2008 is opiates. And once I discovered them in October, it was on. They always say you have 3 loves in your life, right? That was my first. That was my first love. I remember being a month into addiction and knowing that I was a drug addict. Really? A lot of people are, I talk to, I do the same thing as you. I interview people all over the world. And I talk to people and they're like, oh, I admitted it, when I was in rehab or in 9 months, all different things. And like, I knew a month into my addiction that I was addicted, but I loved it and it didn't matter. This was like my baby. I wasn't losing everything. You were nurturing it though. You were nurturing it. I made a promise to myself. As long as you stay with pills, then you won't ever lose everything. If you do heroin, you'll lose everything. So don't do heroin. So honestly, in 9.5 years, I didn't do heroin once. That doesn't make me any better than anybody else. Oh, I know. Because I was doing a lot of pills, and I was doing crazy things for these pills. I was moving all over the country. I lived in 5 different states, moved 30 different times in 15 years. I kept running from myself. I was in North Carolina for a year. I was in Massachusetts back and forth, and I kept going with me. And wherever I am, I'm going to find it. I ended up getting into a relationship when I was like 25 with my childhood best friend. And she was a bipolar, schizophrenic alcoholic. A lot of people, they stopped talking to her, because mental health in the mid 2000s isn't like what it is today. No, you are right. She couldn't like openly talk about like, and if she did, she was looked at like a pariah. Like they weren't having it. A lot of her friends, would say like, these are childhood friends. Like, I just don't know how to deal with her, because she would have episodes. So, but I knew how to, because I'm a patient guy. And also she knew I was a drug addict and she didn't hate me for it. So she was co-signing my bullshit. I was co-signing hers. She didn't really like opiates. She liked the little Coke here and there, but we never had money for Coke. I think like 3 or 4 times in 3 years we had money for Coke, because all my money was going to pills, and then her money was going to wine and alcohol and beer, whatever she could get her hands on. It was toxic because we're co-signing, we're allowing each other to do this. You'd also be afraid to lose that person too. Sometimes when couples are using together and one gets sober, and it's like, oh, you think you're better than, and it's a whole resentment thing. But we didn't get a chance to even do that. We tried. Our parents begged us at one point to try meetings. So like we went to an AA meeting for her. We went to an NA meeting for me. I couldn't tell you a word that was said in either of those meetings. I can tell you it was like 2012, 2013-ish, and I'm getting arrested too. Like I got arrested in 2013. Once I started doctor shopping in like 2013, and I was getting scripts of Xanax and 30s because I loved Perk 30s. That was my baby. Roxy 30s were my baby for 9.5 years. It was just one of those things where I needed the pills all day long, and I was going to do whatever I had to do. So when I would say I was house sitting for this dude, and I house sat for him all the time, but I wasn't on Xanax the other times. I stole all, like, a lot of his wife's jewelry, and I pawned it. This is how I know I was high. I don't remember doing any of this at all, but I went to the closest pawn shop possible. I never would have did that in a sound mind. Any good criminal knows you go to the furthest pawn shop because the police check the closest one to check the IDs. But no, that's how out of my mind I was, that I wasn't even doing that kind of like critical thinking as a criminal, because it wasn't me, JD, that was stealing it. If it was JD that was stealing it, JD wouldn't have went to the closest pawn shop. Now that I'm even thinking about it more, I was like 40 minutes from my hometown where I was house sitting for this dude. I didn't have any dealers in his town. I had to cash that shit in and then drive 40 minutes. There's plenty of pawn shops in Camden, JD, and I didn't do that. And I could have easily slid under the radar, went into a Camden pawn shop, and they never would have found me. But they did. They found me. They picked me up at my house in the afternoon one day. My dad and grandmother pretty much drove behind them besides going to the bank so they could bail me out. I got processed and then bailed out. I had probation. But again, I was prescribed 30s. I was prescribed Xanax. So even if they did drug test me, I can fail. I'm allowed to fail for those. I'm prescribed those. I was arrested for theft, not for drugs.
Right.
You know, so there wasn't consequences. My parents were a consequence. You know, you got to quit and all that. And, you know, I kept saying, yeah, I will. And then I realized real fast that if I didn't do Xanax around my family, they wouldn't catch me getting high. I had been so high for so long on 30s that you couldn't even tell I was on them anymore. But as soon as I would introduce Xanax to the party, lips would change. They get all eyes get all everything was a wrap. I always got caught when I was on mixing Xanax and them around family. I did it a lot of times, not around family, but whenever I was around family, I learned then to be careful not to use Xanax around them because they're going to catch me. So I stopped. But every single time that they called me out for being high, it was never I was on pill. I never on 30s. It was Xanax. I got off probation and everything was right back to normal again. Right, still getting high. I was getting high the entire time. I proposed eventually, and we were engaged. And you know, she took her life. July, 2015. She couldn't do it anymore.
I'm sorry.
You know, I spiraled. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to handle it. I blame myself, kind of thing. Everyone blamed me, kind of thing. I wasn't allowed at the funeral, but jokes kind of on them because she always told me she wouldn't want me at her funeral. She always told me the songs that she wanted played at her funeral. When you're bipolar and schizophrenic and alcoholic, you are planning your death. So even though she was only 26, she was planning, 24, 25. And I couldn't believe it when I found out. I thought it was an accident, honestly. She was 3-4 months from turning 27. Anybody that knows music knows about the 27 Club. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, what's his name from The Doors?
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison. There's so many people that die, even more recently, what's her name? Got to go to rehab. Amy Winehouse, she was 27. The 27 Club is a very real thing, and she wanted to be a part of it. So I didn't think that it was real because it was 3-4 months before she was 27, and that's when she wanted to go. Her head must have just said, "F it," and just sorry, but and just did it. I was pretty lost after that. I got even back into drinking. That's how lost I was. $100-$200 a night at the bar. The bartender would have my stool already up and waiting for me because he knew I was one of the best tippers that would walk in there, and I drank myself for a year. I thought I was out of the woods. I moved to Amish country in Pennsylvania, started a business with my dad and brother doing plumbing. We get to Lancaster County and we start that. And it's about Lancaster County where I was living. It was right off the turnpike in PA. And it was about an hour and 45 minutes to South Jersey where I was from. Sometimes I drive an old cop car. Sometimes I can make it there in an hour flat because I would go like 90 the entire time. But a lot of the times I was dealing with Philly traffic, which meant I was sitting in traffic throwing up into a bag all the time because I was always withdrawing driving to Jersey because I knew I was getting pills there. I didn't trust the pills around where I was because I didn't know anybody. I didn't trust fentanyl. I didn't know what was going to be in them. They're pressed or fake. So I went to my dudes that I trusted in Jersey, and I would drive the 3-4 hour round trip 4 times a week easy.
Wow.
If not more. But there were so many times that I was throwing up bile into a bag, sitting in traffic, waiting to get there. And the closer I got, the more sick I got. Anybody that did opiates right now that's listening knows, as soon as you get, you know that you have it, you know that you can go through, you start feeling more sick because it's like the anticipation, it's like the nerves, it's like the butterflies. And then the closer you get, the more sick you get. I remember there was one time I had to cross the bridge and I saw my dude. We used to do a drive-by. We didn't want it to be obvious that we were doing all these deals all the time. So we would literally drive by each other on streets and just like, I would toss him a pack of smokes, he would toss me a pack of smokes, and then we go on our way. His pack of smokes would have cash in it and mine would have pills in it. April 2018 is when I was watching a documentary on Netflix called Legend of 420. I was a big pothead. I still use cannabis daily. You wouldn't even know I use it unless I told you. I don't smoke weed. I can't. I changed my relationship. You know, I sniffed pills. I didn't eat them. You know, I chugged drinks. I didn't sip them, you know, so I wanted the effects right away. So for me, it was important to change my relationship with cannabis. So for me, being able to escape right away with cannabis would be bad, you know, so that's why I don't allow myself to smoke. I use capsules and I microdose and I take it with my blood pressure medicine, and they set on when they set on, they work for my anxiety, my depression, and my sleep, because I do have severe insomnia since I was 8. I'm a very patient person. You know, I don't yell at my kid. I don't yell at my wife. I don't yell at anybody. I don't even curse at anybody. I'll curse with you, but I won't curse at you. I'm a very patient person. But when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I've been up for days, I have to tell myself out loud, do not hurt yourself. Do not hurt yourself. Do not hurt yourself. Even in sobriety, you know, because I know that if I take my hand and slam it into a concrete wall, the pain will be so great that I'll knock out. And that's what I used to do, was hurt myself to fall asleep. And I actively try not to. But yeah, that's just how it is still to this day. And so I'm watching this documentary on 420. They're doing different segments throughout the entire thing about how cannabis can be a positive thing in a medicine. Also in this documentary was a rehab, a sober living in Los Angeles called High Sobriety. And it was a rehab that taught you how to change your relationship with cannabis. And for the first time in 9.5 years, because I'm 31 now at that point, in 9.5 years, I actually said to myself out loud, like, no, that's a rehab I would go to. Next day, typical day of getting my dog in the car. She's my little road dog. And, you know, I had one of those really bad days again, like usual. And I'm driving back and I Googled it. 8 o'clock at night, I Googled High Sobriety. The phone number popped up and the guy answered at 5 in the afternoon, 5 in the evening, LA on a Saturday. This dude answered. He talked to me for 2 hours. He understood me. You know, for the first time, I was having somebody understand me that I could actually talk to openly and not worry about. I could tell him, yeah, I want to kill myself, bro. You know, I picked out the tree for it even because I was going to go into a tree and make it look like an accident. But every time I was going to go do that, I thought of my dog home alone by herself and how long it would take for them to find her. And she's such a good girl. She wouldn't have went to the bathroom in the house. And I thought that every single time, and it saved my life. And while I say that, I need to also state a manifestation that I don't want to happen. I got really nervous the other night. I was driving somewhere and the roads were, and it was dark, and I almost went into a fucking tree. I was like, oh my God, I have told this story of me picking out trees so many times in my podcast. I don't want people to think if I die going into a tree, people know that it was an accident.
That was an accident. I swear
it really was an accident that time. Like if that's how I go, JT. I'm afraid I'm manifesting it. You know, as I was driving the other night, I'm like, I'm manifesting this darkness.
Oh, wow.
So I have to put out the lightness too. So this guy talks to me and I drop everything and I leave and I moved to LA. Told my dad what was going on. He understood. My mom, she gave me a ride to the airport about an hour and a half away. She helped me out a little bit because I needed to stay even until I got there, until they can give me the right medicines. So my mom enabled me for the last time that I got high, but you know, it is what it is. She was a mother that was just trying to keep me
I
not
hear it. I
sick.
hear it. I hear it a lot.
I
hear
know,
it
I
a lot.
know that, yeah, and I know, especially with opiates and how it takes hold. And I'm
Yes.
31 years old and I'm her oldest, and I'm like scared for the first time in my life. And I haven't touched pills since,
Good for you.
we'll even get to a relapse. When I was drinking, I drank again, but we'll get there. So I go to LA and everything changed instantly. It's because I wanted to be there. I made a conscious decision to change my life. I made a decision that I wanted things different now, and I don't know how to do this. Wouldn't it work if I didn't want it to? If I was forced into it, like in my 20s, when people were trying to force me into it, when I was getting arrested and stuff like that, it never would have worked. And I told them that. I said, listen, I would rattle off a dozen examples of local people that they all know from my friendships of they were made to go. They were made to go. They were made to go. They were made to go, and they came back and relapsed and died. They were made to go, and they came back. It's what happens. I was like, I'm better off just staying here. I'll figure it out. And if I want to go, I'll let you know when I'm ready.
So,
I have a connection to that shirt.
Do you?
Yeah. So, and I'll get there in a second too, because when I was in LA, I met an amazing artist. You see the Bill Murray above me? As
Yes.
Jesus.
Yep.
And I have a Mount Rushmore right here of comedians like George Carlin.
Yep.
And see these bunnies that are humping each other with the cigarette.
Yeah.
That is an artist named Jules Muck. And I met her in the program out in LA, and she would give me tattoos in her front yard in Venice. Shout out to Muck Recovery in Los Angeles, MUCK Recovery. She does meetings out of her front yard in Venice, and it's an awesome spot for meetings. Last time I saw her when she painted the bunnies was October. She was doing a tour from LA to New York City because the Grateful Dead, who was on your shirt, they were doing a 50th anniversary of that album, and they were doing a 3-city tour in LA, Denver, New York, and they commissioned her to do this.
Oh, wow.
So she did that in LA, and then she did that in Denver, and then she did that in New York City.
Wow.
And on the way to New York, she stopped here and gave me some muck bunnies and gave my wife a tattoo, and hung out, and we went painting all over town. Yeah, Muck Rock. She has like 100,000 followers on Instagram. It's crazy. She was on my show when she was here too. But yeah, so anyway, I get to LA and I'm meeting all these amazing people. I want to be in LA. I skipped over this, but I was doing stand-up comedy, in addiction, right? I was broken. I was a broken person. When you're a broken writer, you become a comic. It's your only outlet. It's the only place you can be dark and people will clap for you, besides AA meetings. And that's what was happening, right? Towards the end of my addiction, I was getting up there and I was sharing, not knowing I was sharing. I was making a joke out of my addiction, and I was getting up there. And when I knew that like family wasn't in the crowd watching me that night, it was just like, and nobody I knew, I would get up there and say, hey, I'm JD and I'm an alcoholic. I am in the wrong room again, like that kind of thing. Like just telling on myself. And then I would share about my day, but with jokes. Come to find out, I was sharing at a meeting.
Sharing. So
when I got to LA, anybody who's ever been there is listening knows the meetings are insane. So many, 300 to 500. This is before COVID, but 300 to 500 a week when I was out there, like in LA County. We talked about how I'm obsessive, right?
Yeah.
We talked about my obsessions.
Yeah.
So what is this? What is the phrase for somebody to do a certain amount of meetings and a certain amount of
90
days?
and 90.
Okay. How many do you think I did? Keep in mind the first 29 days, I could only do 2 a day, but I did 250 and 90.
250 meetings in 90 days.
Maybe a little bit more than that, but 250 sounds better. But yeah. There was one weekend I went to 21 in 2 days.
Whoa.
I was hanging out at the West Hollywood Recovery Center, where there was like meetings every hour sometimes, and just doing marathon meetings there. The Comedy Store is where I spent a lot of time too.
Okay.
The Comedy Store is the most world-renowned comedy club in the world. All my heroes, they made it because of the Comedy Store, going back to the 70s. I'm obsessed with the history of comedy and the Comedy Store. So they have AA meetings there, and I got to meet all these comedians.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I met a lot of amazing people, and I had to come back to Pennsylvania because the business was here. My dad never directly told me he needed me home at all the entire time I was gone.
Okay.
But I know he, when as soon as I got back, I saw all the work I had in front of me. He just didn't want me to rush it. He was afraid if he knew he needed some help with anything that I was going to rush back there and it'd be too fast. So yeah, when I came back, I was still going to meetings. I was going to 2 a day. I actually found, I recommend this for anybody early in sobriety. You have to work just as hard to stay sober as you did to get high. That's what my show is.
Absolutely.
So as like I grew up Catholic and I stopped practicing a while ago, but I know what penance are. So my penance to myself when I came back from LA was I found a meeting about an hour from my house, and I would drive to that meeting 2-3 times a week.
Okay.
Because if I wanted sobriety as bad as I wanted pills, then I should want to drive an hour to that meeting. If I don't want to drive an hour to that meeting, then I don't want sobriety as bad as I want the pills. I did that for a long time. I would say I did that for until I got my year chip. When I got my year chip, though, there was a lot of problems. I had met my now wife 3 weeks before that, and I told her we can't get serious, because I got to get a year sober before we get serious. But I was, going to these meetings, and I'm in conservative Bible Belt PA part now, Laura. I'm used to LA. Hey, you're Cali sober. We're all about it, bro. But when I came back, it was just they were not happy about it. They didn't like that I was staying so sober. They didn't like that I was talking about it. They didn't, and I didn't talk about it. It's not like I was going, hey, I'm JD, I'm an alcoholic, and today I smoked weed. It's not. Yeah. That's not what I was doing.
Yeah.
But still, they knew. They knew that I used cannabis because I was open about it, like I am with everybody else still to this day, because I'm always going to be open about it. They were really reluctant to give me a 1-year chip. I had already gotten one from LA anyway, and it's still in my wallet to this day because it meant so much to me, because my friend Jules gave me one of her old 1-year ones.
Okay.
And she had marked it up with a bunch of writing, so it meant a lot to me. So I still have that 1-year chip that she gave me. It's a hope chip. And actually I pay it forward now because I still have all my old chips from 30, 60, 90, all those. And I give them out as hope chips now. So yeah, I ended up letting their resentments cause me to drink. Now I drank. I made a decision to drink, but they didn't help. If you're an old timer and you got a problem with medically assisted treatment, you got a problem with cannabis, put it on your 4th step and talk to your sponsor about it. Please don't address the newcomer in the room that's saying that they're on methadone or, hey, I'm blah, 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 and I'm an addict. And yeah, I'm on Vivitrol. Do not judge him or her. They're going to get in their head. And that's the worst place an addict to be, especially early in sobriety, because then we're going to talk ourselves into some shit. Please don't do that. If you're really working an honest program, if you're really an old timer that's got some time under his belt and you genuinely want to be in the room still, and that's why you come to the rooms every day, it's not just because you're bored and you're retired and nothing to do. You genuinely want to be there, and you see somebody like me in their first year who's still kind of sharing about struggling. Don't tell me I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. I hear you.
Me. Luckily, my relapse wasn't as gnarly as some other ones, Luckily, I was so inundated with early sobriety work that it carried me through my relapse. My relapse lasted 9 months. I hate to even say this. I mean, I'm glad I can say this, but I don't want to put it out there like that. Okay. I didn't drink alcoholically at all in those 9 months.
Why do you think that is?
I know exactly why. I was still working the steps. I was still doing 4th steps. I was still doing 5th steps. I was still praying and meditating. I just wasn't carrying a message, but yeah, I was still working the steps in my mind. Because again, we will do this to ourselves. I said to myself, well, I won't drink alcoholically if I'm working the steps the entire time. If I'm working the steps, then I won't have a reason to drink alcoholically, So I continued working the steps without a sponsor, which is dumb, but still, whenever I need to do a 5th step, I would just call somebody random and be like, hey, can I talk to you about some stuff? And I would, not random, but somebody I knew I could trust, I could unload this on. It depended on the content that I was going to drop on them, depending on who I was going to call. But I would do 5th steps with people all the time. And they were all sober people that I was doing these 5th steps with. And they knew that I had, drank again, but they also knew that I was doing this with working the steps at the same time. So I think they were kind of curious to see what would happen with me too. My wife was an alcoholic before we met, according to her, because I will never call anybody, and she had slowed down her drinking when she left her husband. And then when she met me, she really slowed down. And then when I relapsed with drinking, she wasn't with me. It was my 13th month anniversary. Perfect day, right? And it was literally May 25th. 13 months sober, clean and sober. I went to the store and I got a 6-pack of Twisted Tea. 9 months later, I woke up hungover and I realized I drank a bottle of Jack. I'm like, what do I do? You know, when I'm hungover, you drink and you get high and then you're better. You get some grease in you and you're better. And so those were my options. And then I looked at my phone. It was February 29th. And I was like, holy shit. The other option is I could never drink again. And I have the coolest sober date ever of Leap Day. And so I said to my wife, like, hey, would you want to quit drinking with me? Because like it's Leap Day and this would be a really cool sober day, like a really cool anniversary. She's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we haven't had a drink since.
That is awesome. Oh my God, that's
we
crazy.
haven't celebrated an official birthday yet because
it hasn't come yet.
No, it hasn't come yet. It was life-saving because you know what happened 13 days later? The world shut down. And if I hadn't already made that commitment with one of the coolest sober dates ever, then I definitely would have relapsed with drinking in quarantine. Let's be honest. Like, that's what it was in quarantine. Everyone was drinking in quarantine if you were already drinking. But I had the support with her. We weren't going to meetings, but I had her as support. We were doing it together. And luckily, like I said, I wasn't drinking alcoholically, so I didn't have to go through detoxes or anything this time around. I'd already did that dog and pony show with opiates in 2018. And it wasn't just opiates I was withdrawing from, it was benzos too. But yeah, we did it together. And while we were being sober is how we like kind of birthed this place where I'm at right now. I have always wanted to like run a comedy club, and I'm still going to someday. Just I'm waiting for some other things to pass, like legalization, if you know what I mean. Because I don't want to deal with drunks in a comedy club, but I don't mind dealing with a bunch of potheads in a comedy club. I'm waiting for cannabis to be legalized in Pennsylvania so I can open a comedy club in my college town where I won't allow alcohol, but I will allow open consumption of smoking. But you know what? I also want a nonprofit. I also want to be able to do meetings. I want to be able to hold meetings like I did at the Comedy Store. Like, you know, like I said, I want to be able to hold meetings. And then, you know, we have this place. We couldn't do the comedy club yet because, like I said, I'm waiting for legalization, but it didn't mean I couldn't start this now. And so May of last year, you know, we opened this. Well, we didn't open till July, but we started this, you know, officially. And it's MJ's Progress Not Perfection Meeting Center. And we hold AA, NA, trauma meetings, like group therapy meeting. Yeah, group therapy meetings, like trauma, LGBTQ even. We get together and we chat and we talk and just bring a community together. It's been definitely a whirlwind. You know, we opened in May or July. And then in August, my wife got diagnosed with MS.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's tough.
She can't really walk or anything anymore on her own. She has to have a cane or a walker in order to walk. She's only 37, 38, but it is what it is. You know, I didn't drink over it because guess what? It wouldn't have fixed her.
No, it wouldn't have. You are so right. Get
high over it because it's not going to make her diagnosis any different. It's going to make everything way worse for us.
Yes. Yes.
So all I can do is find other ways to try to support us. Like right now, like one of the reasons I was putting out, I'm trying to also get exposure. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because the more exposure you get, and I started this meeting center with our own money. You know, we pay for it with our own money. I just took a full-time job remotely working out of here in order to keep this afloat because nobody locally wants to donate to a bunch of drug addicts. Again, in conservative area, I know they'll raise thousands of dollars for a bunch of homeless cats, but not for the drug addicts. We did this to ourselves, you know? So I stopped asking for donations and I'm just going to keep it floating myself if I have to, because I love what I do out of here. Yeah. I love doing the podcast out of here. I love connecting with people out of here. You know, you were on my show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. I loved being on. You made me feel very comfortable. It was really, really great talking to you. I love listening to other people too. What is the girl's name that you're helping out with the Just for Today's? Because I'm a Just for Today girl. Krista. That's it.
That's the other thing I want to talk about. Yeah, Krista and I are doing Just for Today. And yeah, her and I, we just started that. She has her own page. It's called Krista Living Sober. Krista is spelled CHRISTA. Living Sober is all one word, Krista Living Sober. But yeah, we get together and we put out daily episodes where they're like 5 to 10 minute episodes every day. And all we do is we take turns, you know, reading every day. Like I'll read and then you know, I'll talk about what I got from it and then she'll talk and then we'll go back and forth a little bit. 5-10 minutes a pop. You know, they're little bite-sized episodes. Yeah, that's why I don't care about breaking the tradition is because I'm literally trying to put it out there that we host AA. We host NA. Yeah. We're trying to get bodies in the door. If you're in Bloomsburg, it's come just on in.
Recovering out loud so people know where we are.
Where we are when they're ready. when they're
That's
ready,
it.
where to find us. Yep. MJ's Progress Not Perfection is the YouTube channel. And you'll see over 100 episodes, 100 interviews. You'll see a bunch of like shorts. I do a bunch of like short clips. I don't know.
You have
man.
a good night. I hope
too.
everything is well. Say hello to your wife for me. I
will.
love what you guys are doing.
Thank
and
you.
keep up the good work.
Thank you
my
so
friend.
much, Larry.
Keep
Thank
up
you.
the good work, all right? And I'm going to shoot you my phone number if you need anything. If you know of anybody that needs anything up here in Connecticut, please let me know, and vice versa.
You got it. Thank you so
All right.
much, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, see
Have
ya.
a great
Bye-bye.
night.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.